The first sound Arya heard was her son crying, small, furious, alive. Before the midwife could wipe the blood from his face, a woman's voice sounded beyond the door. Is the air breathing? Arya's fingers closed around the damp blanket. The midwife went pale. My lady, let me clean him first. No. Arya pulled the baby against her bare chest. Give him to me. Pain split her open again, but when Leo's cheek touched her skin, the room steadied. His fists opened once against her collarbone. His mouth searched blindly until he found the warmth of her. Then his crying broke into small, uneven breaths. Leo, she whispered. I am here. He quieted at the sound, not because he understood words, but because her voice was the first home his body knew. On the chair beside the bed lay the blue cloth she had sewn during her 7th month, uneven stitches, a crooked little house, and Leo's name hidden inside the hem. When Arya tucked one corner beneath his chin, a faint gold spark pulsed over his heart. She thought it was candlelight. Cale had promised that after the birth he would open the northern doors and call her wife before every noble who had pretended not to see her. The hallway answered with silence. Then boots stopped outside. Cale appeared in the half-open doorway. For 1 second, his face softened when he saw the child. Arya saw it. She almost smiled. Then Serena stepped out from behind him in pearl-white silk and looked past Arya's bleeding body to the bundle in her arms. Move her, Serena said softly. My son is cold. Cale looked away. That was the first theft. Serena entered clean where Arya was bloodied, rested where Arya could barely breathe. Behind her came servants carrying blankets embroidered with the northern crest, as if a crest could replace a heartbeat. Arya's voice scraped out. Get out. Serena walked to the cradle. Leo was not even an hour old, but she studied him like an estate being measured. He has Cale's mouth. Good. The nobles will accept him. Her gloved finger brushed Leo's cheek. His small body stiffened before he cried, as if even newborn skin knew the wrong hand. Serena's face hardened. She bent and whispered Arya's lullaby too carefully, copying the rhythm but not the wound. Sleep, my little moon. Mother is here. Arya heard the mistake at once. Moon. Arya had sung home. Leo's mouth crumpled. His hands clawed toward Arya's voice. Arya dragged herself from the bed. Pain tore through her abdomen. Her knees almost gave way, but she reached the cradle first and lifted Leo into her arms. He is my son. Serena's smile thinned. Careful, Arya. Women in your condition become confused. I carried him. I bled for him. He knows my voice. He will learn mine. The door opened wider. Cale stood there, perfectly dressed, untouched by the night that had broken her body open. Relief struck Arya first, then hope. Serena turned to him with wet eyes. She is upsetting the baby. Cale looked at the child, then at Arya's shaking arms. His jaw clenched. Give him to Serena. Arya heard the sentence land like a lock. Arya stared at Cale as if the room had changed languages. Give him to Serena? You are weak, Cale said. You need rest. I need my husband to tell this woman to leave my son alone. Silence fell over the nursery. Serena lowered her eyes. Cale, I told you this would happen. She has become attached, as if Arya had picked Leo up in a hallway instead of growing him beneath her ribs. Arya looked at Cale. What does she mean? For a moment, he looked away. That frightened her more than anger would have. Serena cannot bear children, he said. The North needed an heir. You gave me one. Leo's tiny fist pressed against Arya's skin. You married me, she whispered, privately, legally, usefully. Cale's voice stayed flat because cruelty was easier when it sounded administrative. Serena holds the public title. The court will accept her. And me? Serena unfolded pale silk embroidered with the northern stag. Arya twisted away. Do not dress my son in her crest. Cale took one corner himself. That was worse. His hands were steady as he laid the silk over Leo. Leo whimpered. He rooted toward Arya and found cloth that smelled of Serena's perfume. Serena slid a certificate onto the bedside table. Mother, Lady Serena Ashbourne. Cale signed. Arya did not ask whether he knew what he was doing. He looked directly at the line as he wrote over her life. Then he said the word that killed the last warm room inside her. You were the vessel. For one breath, Arya disappeared. Then Leo cried against her chest. That sound pulled her back. Then this vessel is leaving. By dawn, the mansion had begun erasing her. The servants no longer bowed. The nursery guards no longer met her eyes. A physician arrived with Serena and asked whether Arya heard voices, whether she imagined danger, whether she felt dangerously attached to the child. Arya understood before his pen finished moving. They were building a cage out of paper. Postpartum instability. Delusion. A mother turned into a warning label. The moment Serena left, Arya forced herself to stand. Every step through the corridor felt like tearing stitches. At the records room, the birth ledger lay open. Child, Leo Veilhart. Father, Duke Cale Veilhart. Mother, the ink had been scraped thin. Beside it waited a fresh certificate. Mother, Lady Serena Ashbourne. Arya pressed one bleeding finger to the blank place where her name should have been. The page hissed. A thread of gold answered, then black ink crawled over it like mold. At the bottom of the drawer, she found a black folder stamped with a dead royal seal. One warning had been circled in old gold. Black means the lie is winning. Gold means the child remembers. For bells make the lie live in the body. Arya read it twice, not because she needed another law, because Serena did. She tore the corner free and hid it inside Leo's blue cloth. Serena was not only stealing Leo, she was trying to make him forget the first voice he ever knew. Arya left through the servant gate before sunrise. Rain soaked her cloak within minutes. Her body was still open from birth. Every step dragged fire through her abdomen. She did not stop. Leo slept against her chest, one cheek pressed to the blue cloth hidden beneath a plain blanket. Behind her, bells began to ring. They had found the missing record. Hold on, my love, Arya whispered. If the world forgets me, remember my voice. The northern border road cut through black trees and white fog. If she reached the old bridge, Cale's men would need crown permission to follow. Engines roared behind her. Headlights tore through the fog. A guard shouted, Lady Arya, by order of Duke Cale, return the heir, not her son. Arya ran until her knees failed. She fell in the mud, curling her body over Leo like a door no man could open. The captain reached down. Give him here. Arya bared her teeth. Touch him and I will kill you, the soldiers laughed. Then black cars filled the road. One by one, the guards went silent. A tall man stepped from the lead car, his dark coat marked with the imperial seal. Every soldier dropped to one knee. Crown Regent Cassian Thorne looked first at Arya's bloody hands, then at the sleeping child. The crown has questions for that child, he said. Arya tightened her arms. Cassian saw the movement and stopped 3 steps away. I can stop them from taking him tonight, he said. I cannot make the realm call you mother. That proof has to come from you. Then move your crown out of my way. Cassian looked at the captain. Touch her again, he said, and your duke will kneel with you. Arya did not remember climbing into the black car. One moment she was in the mud, Leo hidden under her cloak. The next, she sat wrapped in a dry coat that smelled of rain and cold cedar, facing the man every soldier feared. Crown Regent Cassian Thorne did not look like a savior. He looked like a sealed verdict. His silver eyes stayed on Leo's faint golden mark. When did it appear? When he heard me. Cassian looked toward the palace gates. If he carries the old blood, the crown will demand isolation. Arya laughed, raw and humorless. Use better handwriting if you like. It is still taking. He did not answer fast enough. That was the first mark against him. At the palace gates, physicians rushed forward with a glass warming cradle. A nurse in royal grey rolled it between Arya and the door. Standard isolation, the nurse said. The infant must be separated for examination. Behind her, a clerk held a half-sealed order. Royal ward, preliminary custody. Cassian saw it. So did Arya. Leo's mouth searched against Arya's torn gown. He was hungry, exhausted, and too new to understand any title they had already hung around his neck. He needs milk, Arya said. Not a throne. The nurse reached for Leo with a folded cloth pressed in her palm. A northern blue thread showed beneath her cuff. Serena's color. Leo's tiny body stiffened. The gold over his heart dimmed before the cloth touched him. Arya kicked the cradle brake and pulled him back so sharply pain tore through her abdomen. That is not palace procedure, she said. That is a kidnapping with cleaner wheels. Guards moved. For one breath, Cassian said nothing. He had come for a possible royal heir. What he saw was a woman who would rather bleed open than surrender her son to a prettier sentence. Cassian took the cloth from the nurse's hand. A bitter sleeping draught stained the fold. The corridor went silent. Seal the gates, he said. Find who sent her. Then he took the royal ward order from the clerk and tore it in half before anyone else could read it. Arya watched the paper fall. Do not mistake that for trust, she said. I won't, Cassian answered. I earned the warning, the physician swallowed. Regent, procedure still requires separation. Then change procedure before she bleeds through the floor, Cassian said. Close her wound. Examine the child in her arms. Record what his body does before you record what the crown wants. They stitched Arya behind a screen with Leo still against her chest. She bit the cloth instead of screaming. Her hand never left his blanket. Only then did the physician open Leo's wrappings without moving him. The gold mark dimmed under every stranger's gaze. When Arya whispered his name, Leo stopped rooting, opened one fist, and breathed. Cassian looked at the physicians. Record that first. by morning, the North had already chosen its story. Duke Kale stood before the great hall in black, his face carved from stone. Beside him, Serena wore pale blue, the color of grief, with one hand on the empty cradle displayed behind them. Every noble could see it. Every noble was meant to. Kale held up a sealed statement. My wife, Arya, suffered a violent collapse after childbirth. In her confusion, she stole my son and fled the estate. The word wife scraped his throat. He used it because Arya's name still had legal value. Serena lowered her eyes. One perfect tear slid down her cheek. We only want the child returned safely. A physician stepped forward with the reports Serena had prepared. Postpartum instability, dangerous attachment, refusal to surrender the infant for care. Serena leaned close. Add suspected harm. If she reaches the palace first, they will ask why she ran. For the first time, Kale hesitated. He remembered Arya in winter, waiting at a dining table gone cold. He remembered the blue blanket in her lap. He remembered almost touching her shoulder once, then choosing the council waiting downstairs. Then Leo's empty cradle stood behind him like a throne he could not afford to lose. Kale took the pen again. Across the capital, public screens lit with Arya's face under one word: abductor. Serena touched the fresh birth certificate. Black ink spread from her fingertip. The royal inquiry began before Arya could stand without trembling. Before they brought her into the chamber, a nurse tried to move Leo into a cradle so Arya could look presentable. Leo woke at once, rooting blindly toward Arya's torn bodice. His face reddened with hunger, not politics. Arya turned her back to the nurse, loosened her collar with shaking fingers, and fed him behind the inquiry screen while nobles waited on the other side to decide whether she was sane. His body softened against her. For 10 breaths, there was no crown, no duke, no false mother. Only a starving newborn who knew where to turn. Then the doors opened. Arya entered beneath the imperial seal with milk still damp on Leo's mouth. Beyond the chamber windows, the palace gates shook under the first crowd Serena had summoned. On the public screens outside, Arya's pale face glowed beneath one word: abductor. Inside, nobles whispered over her plain dress, bare throat, and bloodless lips. No jewels, no family crest, no father to speak for her. Only a baby and a stolen page. The chief registrar placed Kale's accusation on the table. Duke Kale claims you are unstable and unlawfully removed his heir. What proof do you offer? Arya slid the folded record from Leo's blanket. His true birth record. One noble laughed. A desperate woman can forge a page. Arya looked at the public screens. Open the exterior feed. If you intend to call me mad, let the realm watch the paper bleed. The registrar glanced at Cassian. Cassian did not reach for Leo. He did not answer for Arya. He only said, open it. A palace clerk entered with a second order. Transfer the infant to the secure nursery until maternal fitness is determined. The clerk's hands shook. It bears the Duke's emergency seal. 2 guards stepped toward Arya. Leo hiccuped once against her chest, then grabbed the edge of the blue cloth as if even his fist understood the door closing. Arya did not move. She looked at the order. Read the child line aloud. The clerk blinked. Read it. His voice cracked. Return the heir to neutral custody. The heir, Arya said. Not my son. Cassian took the order, held it up to the screen, and tore the northern seal in half. Gasps moved through the court. No custody order enters this hall while the first page is wounded, he said. Arya laid her bleeding thumb on the scraped birth record. Gold answered for 1 heartbeat. Then black ink crawled over it again. The crowd outside went quiet. Arya looked at the judge. A page does not scrape itself, and a baby does not search for neutral custody when he is hungry. They brought a black glass reliquary into the inquiry before the crowd outside could breathe again. Priests carried it like a coffin. The chief priest opened the case. A broken circlet lay inside, dull as old bone. The crown must test the heir, he said. Behind him, a white cradle waited with its wheels unlocked. Arya saw it and smiled without warmth. You brought the cage before you brought the question. The priest reached for Leo. Arya turned her body, making herself the wall between the circlet and her newborn. No, the child may carry royal blood. He carries hunger, exhaustion, my milk on his mouth. Test what you like, but you will not take him from my arms. Murmurs broke over the chamber. Outside, Serena's supporters chanted mother until the windows shook. A noble rose. Remove the child. The report says she is unstable. Cassian drew the ceremonial dagger from the inquiry table and cut the red custody ribbon tied to the white cradle. The ribbon fell at the priest's feet. Say unstable without proof again, Cassian said, and I will spend whatever authority I have left putting you in chains. The chief priest's smile did not change. Arya heard the warning inside Cassian's words. Whatever he did for her cost him something. Good. Then the cost would belong to a choice. She stepped to the reliquary with Leo still pressed to her chest. If your crown needs blood, take mine where everyone can see. Her reopened wrist touched the glass. The circlet blazed gold. Every candle died. The light climbed Arya's arm, not Leo's. Above the broken circlet, an old queen's mark appeared, a thorn sun no one had used since Alolan veil burned. Cassian's breath changed. The priests stumbled back. Only the chief priest did not stumble. For one blink, his eyes showed not fear, but disappointment. False mothers are noisy, he murmured, too low for the court and just loud enough for Arya. True blood is rarer. Arya saw it. So did Cassian. Arya looked at the court. You wanted an heir. The blood answered his mother first. Serena returned to the northern nursery and ordered every trace of Arya removed. Every blanket Arya had touched disappeared into a silver bin. Every bottle, ribbon, and plain cotton cloth she had folded with tired hands was counted like contraband. At the bottom lay the small blue blanket Arya had sewn during her 7th month. Uneven stitches. A crooked little house. Leo's name hidden inside the hem. Serena picked it up between 2 fingers. Burn it, the maid froze. My lady, the child was wrapped in this after birth. Serena's smile vanished. That woman is not his mother. No servant will say birth mother again. No nurse will speak her name near the cradle. A thin black gold thread lay knotted around the cradle rail. Serena had not tied it. The chief priest's messenger had left it before dawn with one instruction. Keep the false mother line alive until the 4th bell. For 1 second, Serena stared at the knot as if it were a hand at her throat. Then another nurse entered with a feeding ledger. The palace requested his feeding times. Serena took the ledger and changed one line herself. Mother refused to nurse. The nurse stared, but Lady Arya fed him in the birthing room. I saw dash. Serena slapped her so hard the blanket fell. You saw a woman become unstable. Right that, the maid bent for the blanket. Serena stepped on it. When he is old enough to ask, he will be told she abandoned him. If he cries for her, cut the story shorter. She dropped the blue cloth into the fire herself. Behind the nursery curtain, the slapped maid waited until Serena left. Then she lifted the unburned corner from the ashes with shaking fingers and hid it in her sleeve. She tore the carbon copy from beneath the feeding ledger page and hid that too. Across the palace, Cassian pulled the grey cloth from a forbidden portrait. Queen Alolan Vale stared back with Arya's eyes. Not the child's blood, he whispered. Hers? Kael arrived at the palace with 20 black vehicles and the northern crest flying from every hood. The message was clear. He had not come to ask. Arya watched from the upper gallery, Leo sleeping against her heart. Her body went cold when Kael stepped into the hall below, Serena at his side in morning blue. Cassian waited before the empty throne. No crown, no sword, no raised voice, only the imperial seal at his back. Kael bowed just enough to insult them both. Regent, I have come for my son. Cassian looked at him for a long moment. You mean the child whose mother line your household altered on a page now seen by the entire capital? A murmur ran through the court. Kael's jaw hardened. My wife is unwell. Return the heir, and I will handle this privately. Above them, Arya stepped into view. For the first time, Kael saw her beneath royal banners. Not hidden, not waiting, not listening for footsteps that never came. Leo stirred at Kael's voice, then settled when Arya laid one hand over his back. Cassian's voice turned the hall to ice. Duke Kael, private power ends at the palace doors. Say unstable again, and your own accusation becomes the trial. A council advisor stepped forward. Regent, the crown cannot block a northern father without opening a succession inquiry. Cassian did not blink. Then open it. The advisor went pale. Outside, every northern guard was disarmed on the screens. The convoy crests were covered in black cloth. One by one, the engines died. Kael looked up at Arya and understood he had come to be judged by her. Serena did not wait for the court to finish counting witnesses. That afternoon, every public screen showed her kneeling beside Leo's empty cradle, one hand over the silver rail, grief arranged perfectly on her face. Arya, she whispered to the cameras, I forgive you. Return the child. Sign the medical release. Admit you were not yourself. I will let you see him once a month. The city softened exactly the way Serena had trained it to. Mercy looked prettier than theft. Inside the palace, a clerk carried in the contract. Voluntary admission of postpartum instability. Temporary separation for the child's safety. No further claim to mother status. Arya read every line, then she turned the page over, checked the seal, and saw the same black gold knot pressed into the wax. Now she knew Serena was not only lying, someone had written the lie into the old right. She smiled. It frightened the clerk. "Bring me a camera," she said. Cassian looked at her. "They will cut the feed, then open 3 feeds. Let them choose which truth to kill in public." 10 minutes later, Arya stood before the same screens with Leo in her arms and the contract open under her bleeding hand. "Serena Ashbourne says she will give me access to my own son if I confess to a lie. That is not mercy. That is ransom." She held the page closer to the lens. The crowd read the last line. No further claim to mother status. For the first time, Serena's perfect grief looked like paperwork. Arya folded the contract and gave it to the registrar. "Keep it. A thief just wrote down the price of my child." Arya returned to the northern estate under a royal warrant. Cassian sent guards, scribes, and the chief registrar with her. But the real proof would not be in an open file. It would be in the mouths of people trained to lower their eyes. Kale met them at the entrance. "You could have asked." "I did," Arya said. For 3 years, she walked past him. The mansion felt smaller now. Every hallway remembered a version of her that had called neglect love. At the nursery door, she stopped beneath a bronze soundbox used to record nurses' orders. She saw it. She did not touch it. Instead, she let the door stand open and turned to the old maid. When Leo cried after Serena took him, "What did this room hear?" The maid trembled. "Your name, my lady." Again and again. Kale looked away. Arya faced the servants in the corridor. "Tell the truth today, and the crown protects you. Stay silent, and you helped steal a child twice." One nurse began to cry. Only then did Arya open the wall cabinet with the old servant's key. Inside lay the contract. Temporary bloodline arrangement. Purpose, production of a lawful northern heir. Below it lay the original feeding ledger Serena had altered, the scrape marks still rough beneath the ink. Original note under the scrape: Lady Arya nursed the child after birth. Child quieted at her voice. Serena's footsteps sounded at the far end of the hall. Arya did not turn. She wanted Serena angry enough to forget the room was listening. Arya lifted the bronze soundbox only after its red eye began to glow. "This room kept a better ledger than you did." The box clicked awake. Serena's voice filled the nursery. "Burn the blue blanket. If he cries for her, cut the story shorter." Kale reached for it. Arya stepped back. "You do not get to silence the room after it finally speaks." The attack came before Arya reached the front hall. A moment earlier, Cassian had walked beside her without touching her elbow, though every guard kept trying to guide her like a damaged object. "You are allowed to lean," he said quietly. "On whom? On the person you choose. Not the person who claims you," Arya almost answered. Then the lights snapped out. Glass shattered. A masked man lunged from the side corridor, blade flashing toward the folder in Arya's hands. Not her throat. The evidence. Arya twisted away. Pain ripped through her stitches. The blade sliced her sleeve and struck the wall. For one blink, she saw the mark on the attacker's wrist, black gold thread twisted into a priest's knot. Then the darkness swallowed it. "Burn it," someone shouted. Royal guards surged forward, but a second attacker broke through near the nursery stairs. Cassian caught him before he reached Arya. The knife meant for her drove into Cassian's side. He did not make a sound. Arya did. For one impossible second, there was only blood on the man who had first seen her as a crown problem and was now bleeding for her proof. Cassian caught her wrist before she could reach him. "The proof," he breathed. "Choose the proof." She almost hated him for making her strong when she wanted to be human. Then she saw Serena at the far end of the hall, white-faced, watching the flame in a servant's hand. Arya ran. She slammed the folder and soundbox into the registrar's arms, seized the burning curtain with both hands, and tore it down before it reached the evidence table. Fire bit into her palms. At the corridor's end, Serena whispered she should have burned the soundbox, still open because Arya had left it open, recorded that too. When the guards dragged the attacker away, the priest's knot on his wrist had already turned to ash. The hearing resumed after palace physicians stitched Cassian behind the inquiry screen and ordered him not to stand. He stayed seated this time, not because he feared pain, because Arya had told him, "Do not turn my trial into your wound." She stood before the court with both palms wrapped in white cloth. If she sat, they would call her weak. If she trembled, they would call her unstable. So she stood. The chief registrar opened the contract. Temporary bloodline arrangement. Purpose, production of a lawful northern heir. The court erupted. Kale's face went went rigid. Serena whispered, "That document is private." Arya turned to her. "So is my body." The silence hurt more than the noise. A hired wet nurse stepped forward with shaking hands. Lady Arya refused to feed the child. She said he was not hers. Serena's mouth curved. Arya did not look at her. "Read the original ledger. Then read the carbon copy Serena forgot existed." The registrar held the ledger and the hidden carbon copy to the screen. Lady Arya nursed the child after birth. Child quieted at her voice. The wet nurse collapsed into tears. "Lady Serena paid me. She said no one would believe a hidden wife." Then the bronze soundbox played. "Burn the blue blanket. If he cries for her, cut the story shorter." The slapped maid laid the sealed unburned cloth beside Leo's name. Before the registrar closed the evidence tray, she pressed one loose blue thread into Arya's bandage. The box clicked again. "She should have burned." The first servant in northern colors stepped away from Serena. A scribe looked down at Leo's file and forgot Arya's name for one breath. This time, the court heard the lie reach him before any screen could explain it. Cale found Arya's letters in the bottom drawer of his old desk. Dozens of envelopes, never opened. Some from her first winter in the north. Some from the months when she grew quiet and round beneath loose gowns. One was dated the week before Leo's birth. "Cale, the baby kicked when he heard your voice today. I know you are busy, but when this is over, maybe we can be a real family. I made him a blue blanket. The stitches are terrible. Please do not laugh." The page blurred. Cale hated that. Regret felt too much like weakness, and weakness was easier to blame on Serena. Beneath the letters lay blue booties, never opened. He remembered ordering a servant to hide them because Serena disliked the color. He remembered Arya waiting outside his study, one hand on her belly, until he told the guard to send her away. A knock came. His steward entered, pale. "Your Grace," the registrar requested the original marriage file. "I found two versions. The first contract bore Arya's signature. The second bore Serena's handwriting in the margins. Mother status transferable after birth. Public Duchess title reserved for Lady Serena Ashbourne. Possible crown blood. Confirmed before childbirth." Cale sat down slowly. Serena had not fooled him alone. He had chosen not to look. Outside the window, a public screen replayed Arya standing with burned hands while the soundbox repeated Serena's order. "Burn the blue blanket. If he cries for her, cut the story shorter." Cale opened the drawer again. For one breath, he could have carried the letters to court. He could have said her name before the lie grew teeth. Instead, he placed the booties back in the drawer, locked it, and put the key in his pocket. His hand shook. He still locked it. Then he turned to the steward. "Prepare my statement. The North will not lose the heir because I was careless with a hidden wife." The steward stared at him as if a door had closed. Cale looked back at the screen where Leo's mark answered Arya's voice while he stood close enough to hear and still did nothing. He had lived under the same roof as the song. He still chose the house. Cale came to Arya before dawn. Not alone. That was how she knew the remorse had already failed. Two northern lawyers waited near the garden arch with a clean contract, a public dignity statement, and a title large enough to cover a crime if she let it. Arya met him in the palace garden with Leo asleep against her shoulder. Cashin's guards watched from the glass doors, close enough to intervene, far enough to let her choose. Cale looked tired. Good, Arya thought. Let him learn what sleeplessness feels like. "I can still fix this," he said. "No," Arya said. "You can still benefit from fixing this. They are different things." His jaw tightened. "Come back with me. I will name you Duchess publicly, properly. Leo can remain under the North with your status restored." Leo stirred at Cale's voice. His mouth pulled down before any cry came. Cale's eyes softened too late. He reached toward the blanket. Before his fingers touched Leo, the mark over Leo's heart darkened and the baby's shoulders went stiff. Cale stopped, wounded by a rejection too small to argue with. Arya saw it and hated him more for it. "You should have come when I was writing those letters," she said. "You should have asked why your wife ate alone. You should have touched your son before he became evidence." Cale's face changed. So he had read them, and still brought lawyers. "Arya," he said, quieter now, "the North will tear itself apart if I return without him. Then let it bleed from the wound you made." One lawyer stepped forward. "My lady, the title offer expires at dawn." Arya laughed once. Leo flinched at the sound, so she lowered her voice and kissed his hair until his body softened again. "Tell your duke," she said, "that motherhood is not a promotion." The palace windows began to glow with Serena's next broadcast. Cale looked toward the screens. Arya saw the choice move across his face. Not wife, not child, house, again. Serena released Kale's accusation across every public screen before the court could seal the chamber doors. Then came the image that split the Capitol open, Serena kneeling beside Leo's empty cradle, one hand on its silver rail, her cheek wet with perfect grief. "Return my son," she whispered to the cameras. "Before the woman who stole him harms him." Outside the palace, thousands began shouting before the recording ended, "Mother, mother, mother." Inside, the registrar reached for the emergency shutter to cut the screens. Arya stopped him. "No, let the first bell take the crowd where everyone can see it." Cassian looked at her and understood. If they hid the first theft, no one would believe the next three. So Arya let Serena win the street. She lowered Leo into the royal cradle only because her hand stayed on his blanket. "In my reach," she said. Leo woke and cried as if every voice outside had entered his skin. His mouth searched for Arya, but the crowd's chant made his breath break in short, frightened hiccups. The black ink on his record thickened. A young guard looked at Arya and hesitated. "My lady, perhaps the child should be moved to a secure room." Arya heard what he meant. "Away from her." Cassian gripped the table, pale beneath fresh stitches. "No one moves him without her." The palace windows shook. A stone smashed through the outer glass. Another. Then the western gate burst open. The crowd surged into the first courtyard, carrying blue ribbons Serena had handed out as proof of mourning. Some wore them around their wrists. Some tied them to children's sleeves. Serena had turned Arya's private cloth into a public uniform. Arya looked at the ribbons and went cold. From the eastern passage, a nursery made in northern colors slipped behind the guards. The lamp snapped black for half a breath. When the light returned, Arya's hand closed on air. Leo's cradle stood empty. The corridor doors slammed before Arya reached them. Old locks sealed with a sound like stone teeth closing. Behind the door, Leo screamed. Not the public cry of an heir. A newborn's raw, panicked cry for the body that had held him through blood and rain. Arya struck the wood with both bandaged hands. "Open it. He is crying." A guard hesitated. "By whose order?" Arya stared at him. His mother's. The bronze nameplate beside the nursery door shimmered. Lady Arya, veil blurred into blank metal. The guard frowned. "Whose child?" For one terrible breath, Serena had one. Inside the passage, the maid ran with Leo against her shoulder. Beyond her waited a service gate, a northern carriage, and a crowd trained to call Serena mother. Arya stopped hitting the door. She pulled the loose, scorched blue thread from her bandage and pressed it into the seam. "Leo," she called, soft enough to be beside his cradle. "My love, find me inside." Serena's stolen lullaby floated down the passage. Leo's screaming broke into breathless sobs. Cassian caught the guard by the collar. "Look at her. She came through the rain with that child in her arms." "Remember," the guard's eyes stayed empty. Arya closed her eyes and counted Leo's first 3 breaths against her chest. 1, 2, 3. Gold leaked through the keyhole. The old lock screamed. Then the door blew apart. At the far service gate, Serena took Leo into her arms. For one cruel second, she almost looked like a mother. Serena reached the service gate before the guards did. Rain lashed the courtyard. The crowd pressed against the outer bars, chanting her name and Arya's guilt. A black northern carriage waited beyond the arch. Kale stood beside it. Serena's face changed when she saw him. For the first time, she looked afraid. "Give him to me," Kale said. "You said he was mine." "I said what the North needed to hear." He took Leo from her arms before she could step back. Arya reached the arch just in time to see it. Her body remembered rising when Kale entered rooms. Her hands remembered smoothing gowns he never noticed. Her heart remembered being grateful for crumbs. Then Leo whimpered. Kale looked down at the child and softened too late. "I am your father," he whispered. The golden mark over Leo's heart went dark. The baby screamed. Kale froze. For one heartbeat, he looked like a father. Then pride made him hold tighter. "Blood calms blood," Serena hissed. "Make the crowd see he accepts you." Kale turned toward the cameras instead of toward Arya. That was his final choice. He pressed Leo to his chest. Leo's cry stopped. Not because he was soothed, because his body went silent. The small monitor on the physician's tray beside them flattened into a thin gold line, then blackened at the edge. Arya's face changed. She crossed the courtyard through rain and shouting and struck Kale's hand away so hard the carriage door rang. "You do not get to teach my son that terror is obedience." Leo fell against her chest, soundless. No gold answered. Silence frightened Arya more than screaming. Leo lay against her chest, eyes open, mouth parted, no cry coming out. His fists had closed so tightly around nothing that his nails marked his palms. When Arya touched his cheek, his mouth searched for her for 1 weak second, then stopped as if some part of him had forgotten how to trust the search. Serena stepped forward, soaked white silk clinging to her like a burial sheet. "See," she said softly, "all children learn. The world tells them who to love, and they obey." Kale stared at his empty hands. Rain ran over his knuckles. For the first time, they looked like hands that had signed a child away. Arya ignored them both. "Bring the maid," she said. Cassian looked at her, the one Serena slapped. "Bring her now, and turn on every courtyard camera. Do not cut away if he does not answer me." Serena's smile faltered. The old maid pushed through the guards with the evidence tray the registrar had just unsealed. Inside lay the saved corner of blue cloth, the hidden carbon copy, and a line of Arya's crooked stitching. "My Leo." First breath. Arya pressed the cloth and her blood-damp bandage over the tiny mark above Leo's heart. Then she looked at Serena. "Sing it. The lullaby you said made him yours." Serena lifted her chin and sang. On the second line, she used the wrong word. The maid whispered, "Lady Arya never sang moon. She sang home." The cameras caught it. The crowd outside heard the mistake before Serena could cover it. A single gold pulse crossed Leo's mark. Then it died again. He did not cry. He did not turn. Only a tiny hiccup shook his chest, useless and human, before his body went still again. Arya felt it against her ribs and almost forgot the cameras. For one breath, there was no court. There was only a mother trying not to beg her baby to remember her. Serena recovered too quickly. "One wrong word does not make a mother." Arya bent close to Leo and sang the true line. His fingers twitched toward her bandage, stopped, then curled against his own palm instead. The saved cloth slowed the black at his heart. It did not restore him. Behind them, the first warning bell of the final dawn sounded from the city tower by itself. Serena smiled through the rain. "You proved he heard you once," she whispered. "Now prove he can still find you." The bell had not been touched. That was the worst part. The sound rolled through the palace before any hand reached the tower rope. Leo flinched in his sleep and curled tighter around the blue cloth, but his face did not turn to Arya's voice. Across the motherline ledger, black ink shivered under Serena's name. Arya carried Leo into the empty antechamber before the priests could explain him into an object. No crowd, no screen, no judge. For 3 minutes, she was alone with her son. She opened her gown enough for him to smell milk. His mouth moved once, searching. His lips brushed her skin, missed the latch, and trembled. Then his eyes drifted past her shoulder, lost and frightened. Arya's anger cracked. "Leo," she whispered, so softly no one else could use the sound. "Do you not know me?" His lower lip trembled. No cry came. That silence nearly broke her. Then the door opened, and the chief registrar entered with Cassian behind him. "Say it plainly," Cassian ordered. "No priest language." The registrar swallowed. 4 bells. Crowd. Room. Body. Truth. If Serena's name survives the 4th, the lie will feel like love. That was enough. No old law sounded merciful when spoken cleanly. The chapel doors opened on their own. The chief priest waited beyond them, gold at his throat, calm in his eyes. He looked at Serena the way a butcher looked at a tool with one clean use left. "The bell was built to teach children what the realm accepts," he said. Arya stepped toward him with Leo in her arms. "Then it was built by cowards." The priest smiled. "False mothers are temporary. The child is permanent. Do not mistake being useful for being chosen." "Lady Serena." Serena went white. For the first time, Arya saw the chain around the thief. The chief priest continued, softer. "But a useful lie may still open a permanent door." Cassian moved for him. The floor split open before he crossed the second step. The altar swallowed the bell rope into darkness. The registrar seized Cassian's sleeve. "Break the bell wrong while the child is inside it, and the lie seals faster." Cassian stopped, shaking with the cost of not being able to solve what he had failed to prevent. The black gold touched the first stitch of Leo's name. Serena wore white when the court called her back. This time, no public screen stood behind her. Only the empty cradle. Only the servants she had trained to lower their eyes. Arya had asked for that. Screens could sway a crowd. Servants could break a room. The chief registrar read the first false report. One physician broke before the second page. Lady Serena told us what to write, he said. She said the Duke approved it. Kale looked down as if the floor had finally learned his name. Serena lifted her chin. Fear makes servants invent stories. Arya did not answer her. She looked to the servants' gallery. The old maid placed the saved blue cloth on the table. The nurse laid down the torn feeding ledger. Lady Arya nursed the child after birth. Another servant stepped forward. We were ordered never to say birth mother, then another. Then another. Serena reached for the cradle rail as if pity still lived there. The nearest servant moved away. That was the first punishment that truly touched her. Arya lifted Serena's mercy contract, not to the screens, but to the servants. Read the last line, she said. The old maid did. No further claim to mother status. Arya looked at the court. A mother does not make visitation a reward for confessing to madness. A kidnapper does. Leo's mark flickered at Serena's voice. The blue cloth did not turn it gold. It only stopped the black from spreading. The room saw it. Serena's perfect face cracked. Every house in this court trades women's bodies for heirs, she whispered. I only refuse to be left empty. Arya's eyes hardened. So you tried to empty me. A servant in northern blue took off her ribbon and laid it beside the cradle. Serena stared at the ribbon like it had betrayed her. Then the second bell sounded by itself. The room that had turned from Serena now turned uncertain again. A young scribe blinked at Leo's file and frowned at Arya as if she had become a stranger mid-breath. Serena looked up, and through the ruin of her face came a smile. Servants can leave, she whispered. Memory still has a bell. The palace doors opened to a roar. Outside, thousands of northern citizens watched Serena's final proclamation spread across every public screen. Mother of the heir, Lady Serena Ashbourne. Then Kale's recorded voice followed. Arya was unstable after childbirth. Lady Serena acted to protect my son. During the recess, Serena had broken the silver rail of the empty cradle and cut her finger on the old motherline seal hidden inside it. Before the guards reached her, she pressed that blood to a copied birth record and smiled at the first black letter. The court turned toward Kale. Kale went white. Serena had used his words before he could swallow them. Across every copied birth record, one name began to write itself again and again. Mother, Serena Ashbourne. Mother, Serena Ashbourne. Mother, Serena Ashbourne. Leo screamed in Arya's arms. Then the cry snapped off. His body went stiff, not peaceful. His eyes stayed open. His mouth searched once, missed Arya's skin, and stopped. The gold mark dimmed to a thread. A young priest blinked at Arya. Why is the queen claimant holding Lady Serena's child? The words struck harder than a blade. The second bell had stolen the room. The third was reaching for Leo's body. Cassian stepped forward despite the blood soaking through his bandage. Look at her. Look at the child. But even the guards hesitated. Beyond the gates, the crowd began to chant one word. Mother. Not for Arya. The lie no longer lived on paper. It had learned to wear 1,000 faces. The third bell sounded before dawn. Serena stood at the chamber doors, blood on her finger, white dress stained red. One more ring, she whispered, and his body will never search for you again. Arya looked down at Leo. For the first time since his birth, his eyes did not turn toward her voice. They drifted across the room, unfocused, as if she were already becoming a stranger. Arya did not scream. She lowered her mouth to his ear. Then I will make the whole world remember what your body cannot. The fourth and final bell began to sound. If it finished before Leo found Arya again, Serena's name would stop being ink and become love. Arya did not stay trapped beneath the court ceiling. She carried Leo through the open hall doors and up the first steps of the bell tower, where every screen in the capital could see the rope hanging black above them. No guard led her. No priest commanded her. On every public screen, the evidence feed Arya had prepared opened at once: the scraped record, the feeding ledger, the mercy contract, Serena's wrong lullaby, Kale's accusation, the sound box, the saved blue cloth, and the first page Arya had hidden against Leo's skin. Serena saw the screens and understood too late. Arya had not come to beg the law. She had brought the law to watch the lie collapse. Serena reached out. If the record must decide, let him come to the woman the world is ready to remember. remember, no one missed how she avoided the word mother. Arya lowered Leo between them, one hand still touching his blanket. Then remember everything, Arya said. Serena sang the stolen lullaby. This time, she used home. She had learned the word. She still had not lived it. Leo's face twisted at the sound. He hiccuped, flinched, and turned his mouth toward the air as if searching for the version of the word that had once carried milk and warmth. It was not Serena's. Arya did not sing yet. She asked one question. After I named him Leo, what was the first thing I said to him? Serena froze. The final bell groaned above them. The hall heard the answer in her silence. The old maid stepped forward, crying. You said, I am here. Then you sang home. Serena's eyes broke open. I learned the song, she whispered. I burned the cloth. I wore the cradle. I made them call me mother. Why is it still not mine? No one answered. The silence lasted long enough for every camera to find Serena's empty hands. That was the answer. Arya pressed the saved blue cloth over the tiny scar above Leo's heart and counted the first 3 breaths he had taken on her chest. 1, 2, 3. Then she bent close. Leo, I am here. Sleep, my little home. Mother is here. For one terrible breath. Nothing happened. Then Leo's tiny hand opened. He caught her finger and cried. Not the thin silent panic of the stolen body. A newborn's furious, living cry. The soundbox clicked awake, replaying Serena's own voice. If he cries for her, cut this story shorter. The 4th bell cracked before it could finish. Gold exploded through the tower because the child answered, the witnesses saw, and the lie finally contradicted itself in public. Every screen changed at once. Mother, Arya Vale. Not claimant. Not vessel. Mother. The verdict came before sunset. No one let the court breathe after the tower burst gold. Arya would not give the lie time to dress itself again. Serena stood beside the empty cradle she had once placed before every camera. Its silver ribbons shook in the wind from the open palace doors. The registrar read fast. Leo is removed from Duke Kael's custody, guardianship, and political succession claim. No northern title may use his name without Queen Claimant Arya Vale's consent. All altered birth records are void. Kael's head snapped up. He is my son. Arya looked at him. He was your claim, never your possession. A guard removed the northern air seal from Kael's coat. Metal cracked in the guard's fist. Power, not love, finally made Kael pale. Say it, Arya told him. Not the polite version. The true one. His jaw locked. The court waited. At last, Kael forced the words through his teeth. I wrote my wife into madness because her truth threatened my house. I gave my son to a lie because the lie served me. Arya was never unstable. I made the world call her that. The lie that had caged her died in his own mouth. Every arrest order bearing his name blackened. Then he looked at Leo. Let me hold him once. Arya did not answer. Leo answered first. At Kael's voice, his body tightened against Arya. One small hand clutched the blue cloth. His mouth pulled down, not from hunger, but from memory of the arms that had mistaken terror for obedience. Kael's face collapsed. I can learn the song, he said, suddenly desperate. Tell me the line. I will learn it. Arya's voice stayed quiet. He is not a door you can open after losing the key. Behind them, the empty cradle rolled into the center of the court. Mother, Arya Vale. Serena touched the cradle rail. No, they prayed for me. They called me mother, one by one. The servants who had carried that cradle let go. It stood beside her, empty and suddenly ugly. Serena grabbed the silver rail as if she could shake a child out of it. I practiced, she said, voice cracking. I knew the blankets. I knew the cameras. I knew the word. Then she sang the correct line, broken and wet. Leo turned his face into Arya's chest. That was when Serena finally looked empty. Arya looked at her. You knew the performance, not the child. Above the chapel doors, the chief priest watched the black seal die. He did not look angry. He looked relieved to be done with Serena. The old queen's seal opened before Arya's wounds had closed. The court called it the final coronation test. Arya heard a different name. The same theft, dressed better. She did not give it room to become another trial. The broken crown lifted above the altar and cast a shadow over Leo's sleeping face. Inside the seal waited a burnt strip of parchment. Cassian read the first line and went still. If my daughter lives, trust no crown that stood silent while I burned. Arya looked at him. him. You knew my mother was murdered. No, Cassian said. I inherited sealed laws and chose not to break them. Stable silence, Arya said. That is what men call a locked door. Then the motherline record opened at her feet. Black ink shaped one command. To wear the crown, surrender the child to the crown. Leo's fingers tightened around the blue cloth. Kale had called him an heir. Serena had called him proof. Now the crown called him succession. Every thief had better language than the last. The council turned to Cassian. Regent Thorne must decide, one advisor said. Will you recognize a claimant who places a private child above the realm? Cassian stood at the foot of the throne. The regent ring smoked on his hand. Arya saw the old shame move through his face. When I found you on the border, he said, loud enough for the screens, I had a royal ward order drafted for Leo. I thought the crown could protect him better than any mother. The hall went silent. Arya's eyes did not soften. And now I know protection that begins by taking is only theft with soldiers, the advisor snapped. Without that ring, your authority ends. Good, Cassian said. He crushed the regent ring against the throne step. Black fire branded his palm. He did not reach for Leo. He did not ask Arya to trust him in private. He knelt where every screen could see and placed the broken ring at her feet. My protection stands under your word, he said. Not over your child. Arya did not rush to save him. She knew the cost had to be seen. Then she stepped beside him with Leo in her arms. I am his mother before I am your queen. If the crown cannot survive that truth, let it break. Gold cracked through the black command. Cassian lowered his head. Not a proposal. A guardian returning power. Then stand with me, Arya said. Not above me. Arya walked to the throne carrying Leo herself. No man led her. No hand guided her elbow. At the first step, Leo stirred. The hall waited for her to keep walking, for the queen to come before the mother. Arya stopped. She shifted the blanket from his cheek, checked the scar over his heart, and let him curl his fist around her bandaged finger until his breathing settled. Only then did she climb. The broken crown waited on black velvet, repaired with gold that still glowed faintly from her blood. Cassian stood below the steps, his burned palm open where everyone could see it. The chief priest lifted the circlet. The old rites still required his hands. Until the coronation sealed, removing him would break the crown seal around Leo's name. For one blink, Arya thought the gold at his throat had no warmth. The priest's fingers drifted too near the blue cloth. Cassian's burned hand closed around his wrist before he touched it. The hall froze. The priest smiled as if the warning had amused him. Only the crown, he said softly. Only the crown, Cassian answered. Not the child, Lady Arya Vale, daughter of Queen Eloin, last blood of the old throne. Do you accept the crown? A priestess stepped forward to take Leo. Arya's gaze cut to her. No, the priestess stopped. Arya took the crown from the priest's hands. Kale, watching from the barred outer gallery, went still. Serena, chained between guards, stopped breathing. Arya raised the circlet herself. I accept what was always mine. I refuse what was never yours to demand. She placed it on her own head with Leo asleep in her arms. Gold light rose through the hall. A queen. A mother. No one's vessel. The motherline record opened at her feet. This time, the first name written in gold was not Leo's. It was Arya Vale. The coronation ended at dusk. Arya did not let celebration bury the crime. With Leo against her heart, she signed 3 decrees. False medical reports burned. Mother transfer laws void. No child may be separated by contract, title, household claim, crown command, crowd demand, or purchased record from the mother who carried, birthed, or lawfully raised them. The crowd outside repeated each decree from the screens, first uncertain, then louder. When Arya stepped onto the balcony, the same people who had screamed Serena's title fell silent. Serena stood below in chains beside the empty cradle she had used for pity. Arya did not raise her voice. You called her mother because a screen told you to. Now watch every screen tell the truth. The Capitol displays split in 2. On one side, Serena wept beside the empty cradle. On the other, the mercy contract filled the frame. No further claim to mother status. Then came the feeding ledger. Then the bought wet nurse confessing. Then the wrong lullaby. Then the tower, where Serena finally sang the right word and Leo still cried for Arya. The stolen word echoed across the square. Home. A child near the gates whispered at first. Leo woke against Arya's shoulder. He made one small hungry sound and turned into her neck before the crowd could matter. The gold mark over his heart steadied at her voice. One woman lowered her blue ribbon, then another. Then thousands of ribbons fell into the rain. Serena lunged toward the nearest ribbon as if she could gather the title back by hand. A guard's boot pinned it to the mud. The court dismantled the cradle piece by piece. The first silver ribbon fell. Serena flinched. The second rail broke. The hidden motherline seal inside it was exposed, black and useless. The cradle wheels were locked and turned toward Serena, forcing her to face the empty prop she had called a child. The registrar placed the final statement in her chains. "Read it," Arya said. Serena's throat worked. "The child's mother is Arya Vale. I forged grief to steal what I could not bear. I called theft mercy. I called a woman unstable because I could not become what she already was." Outside, the crowd said Arya's name, not loudly at first. That made it worse. Kale stood beyond the balcony rail, stripped of title, seal, and excuse. He tried to sing the first line of Leo's lullaby. He shaped the word home with his mouth, but no sound came. The crowd heard that too. Above the chapel doors, the chief priest watched Serena break. He did not look angry. He looked as if the experiment had succeeded. That night, the palace was quiet for the first time since Leo's birth. No crowd shook the gates. No physician waited with a false report. No cradle stood empty for a camera. Arya sat beside the nursery window with Leo asleep against her chest. The blue cloth lay across him, cleaned but not made new. The burned corner remained. The crooked little house remained. Arya had stitched the torn edge herself. For the first time, the gold mark over Leo's heart stayed calm through a full turning of the hourglass. Arya lowered her mouth to his hair. "No one will rename you again," she whispered. His fingers curled once around her bandage, then relaxed. Outside the open door, Cassian stood with his burned hand uncovered, not hiding the wound, not using it to enter. "You can come in," Arya said. "I know. Then why are you standing there?" He opened his hand. "Because the last men who entered rooms around you came to take something. I would rather be invited twice than assumed once." Arya looked down before he could see what that did to her. "Then stand there," she said. "Not as regent. As the first man who waited." Cassian stepped inside and stopped beside the door, exactly where she had allowed him to stand. Leo did not cry. The gold mark stayed warm beneath the repaired cloth. For one breath, the realm was clean. Then the candle flame bent toward the western chapel. In the dark, the chief priest removed the gold collar from beneath his robes. Its underside was black at the roots. He placed Serena's snapped cradle seal inside it. The dead seal woke. A young priest whispered. Serena failed. The chief priest smiled. "Serena wanted a name," he said. "I want what answers when the name is stripped away." He placed one finger on the waking seal. "Failure is what tools call the end." Across the nursery, the repaired blue cloth twitched. On the cradle rail, one drop of blackened gold appeared. A hairline crack opened beneath it, carrying the blackened gold forward. It did not move toward the crown. It did not move toward Arya's name. It moved toward Leo. Queen Eloan's warning burned into the stone beneath the cradle. "The traitor still wears gold." Arya lifted her sleeping son before the crack reached the cloth. Cassian stepped to the door, burned hand raised, but not between Arya and Leo. Beside them, the next theft had already chosen the child.